Get that little black brat away from my painting. Mrs. Helena Voss's voice cracked through the elegant hum of conversation like a whip, slicing across the glittering air of Hartley Mansion's gallery. Her jeweled hands clapped sharply, echoing off marble walls as startled guests turned. The crystal chandeliers trembled slightly under the sudden tension. 12-year-old Amara Cole stood frozen before a $12 million French Impressionist painting, her small hands still clasped behind her back, her dark eyes locked on the canvas. The hostility in the room pressed down like heavy velvet. "These people have no business near fine art," Helena hissed, her red lips curling in disgust. "Lydia, control your child before she ruins something priceless." The murmurs began instantly, silken gowns rustling, champagne flutes trembling, polite laughter fading into cruel curiosity. Lydia Cole, wearing her plain black uniform, rushed forward, trembling. "Please forgive us, Mrs. Voss. Amara, step away right now." But Amara didn't move. Her gaze never wavered. The guests leaned closer, whispering, "How dare a servant's daughter stand so boldly beneath the chandelier light?" Then in clear, perfect French, Amara spoke. "Ce tableau est faux." Her voice was steady, almost calm. "That painting is fake." The room gasped collectively. Crystal glass shattered somewhere in the distance. For a moment, time itself seemed to stop. A maid's child had just declared the mansion's crown jewel, a masterpiece celebrated across Europe, to be a fraud. Helena's face flushed deep crimson. "What nonsense is this?" she shrieked. "A child dares insult my collection." Before anyone could respond, a calm, measured voice broke the chaos. "Excuse me, little one," said Dr. Evelyn Hartley, owner of the mansion and respected art scholar, stepping forward from the stunned crowd. Her heels clicked against the marble like a judge approaching the bench. "What exactly did you just say?" Amara swallowed hard, but met the woman's gaze without flinching. "The brushwork in the lower right corner doesn't match Monet's style from 1894, she said, still in French. And the paint layers contained synthetic binders that weren't available until the 1950s. A second wave of gasps rippled through the room. The girl wasn't merely guessing. She was citing technical details only experts used. Dr. Hartley's brows arched, curiosity replacing irritation. "In English, please." Amara nodded and switched languages effortlessly. "The signature placement is wrong, too. Monet usually signed the Water Lily series in the bottom left, not the right. And the canvas ground layer is machine-prepared, not hand-coated." The tension thickened. Wealthy collectors exchanged nervous glances. Lydia clutched her apron, trembling. Helena's nostrils flared like a cornered animal. Dr. Hartley's teacup froze halfway to her lips. Every word from the child's mouth mirrored the quiet doubts she herself had harbored for weeks. "Where did you learn these things?" she asked softly. Amara hesitated, then whispered, "From your library, ma'am. Every time Mama worked, I studied. I taught myself French and Italian so I could read the original art books." The room fell into stunned silence. Lydia bowed her head, ashamed yet proud. "I'm so sorry, Dr. Hartley. She's always been curious, but I never meant for her to speak out." Dr. Hartley turned slowly to Helena Voss, whose fury now burned crimson. "Mrs. Voss, I believe this child deserves to be heard." Helena scoffed. "Heard? She's a servant's child. She belongs with mops, not masterpieces." But Hartley ignored her. "Amara," she said quietly, "you and I need to talk. Alone." 2 hours later, the mansion's private library glowed under soft lamplight. Shelves towered like cathedrals of knowledge. The air smelled of aged leather and roasted coffee. Dr. Hartley stood behind her mahogany desk, watching the small girl who now scanned the books like an experienced scholar. "Show me what you know," Hartley said finally. Amara opened a heavy art volume with steady hands. "This Caravaggio," she said fluently in Italian, "was painted during his exile in Naples. You can tell by the darker palette and the desperate energy in the strokes." Hartley blinked, almost in disbelief. The child was not reciting facts. She was interpreting emotion through brushwork. "And this?" Hartley asked, pointing at another page. "Picasso. Blue period, 1903, Amara replied in Spanish. Painted after the death of his friend Carlos Casagemas. The sadness in the posture reflects his grief. Each answer came in another language, Italian, Spanish, then German. Each explanation precise, confident, and profound. Dr. Hartley finally set her cup down. You've been hiding an education inside these walls, haven't you? Amara smiled faintly. I've just been learning what the world hides from people like me. Hartley's gaze softened. Then it's time the world finally listens. What began as humiliation in a glittering gallery had just transformed into something extraordinary. The golden morning light poured through the high windows of Hartley Mansion's library, spilling across shelves filled with centuries of knowledge. The faint tick of an antique clock echoed through the still air as Dr. Evelyn Hartley poured herself another cup of coffee, watching Amara Cole trace her fingers over a shelf of priceless volumes. Tell me, Amara, Hartley said quietly, how long have you been studying these books? Since Mama started working here, Amara replied, her eyes scanning the spines with practiced focus. When she cleaned, I read. Every break, every quiet hour. The books became my teachers. Dr. Hartley leaned against her desk, intrigued. The girl's confidence was remarkable for her age, her voice steady but never arrogant. And the languages? I learned French first, Amara said, smiling faintly. Most art history texts are written in French, then Italian for the Renaissance, Spanish for Goya and Picasso, German for museum catalogs. She shrugged softly. I use free phone apps and old library tapes Mama brought home. Hartley blinked. You mean you taught yourself everything? Amara nodded. I couldn't afford school, so I built my own. Lydia, standing quietly near the doorway, clasped her hands nervously. I didn't know how deep her studying went, ma'am. I thought it was just curiosity. Dr. Hartley smiled gently. Curiosity like this builds empires. For hours, the two sat side by side in that vast library. Dr. Hartley pointed to paintings, asked questions in multiple languages, and watched in awe as Amara answered with ease. Her explanations were more than factual. They were emotional, human, alive. This Degas ballet piece, Amara noted, flipping to a page in one of Hartley's private catalogs, is misdated by 3 years. The costumes and theater design show 1877, not 1874. Hartley froze mid-sip. She'd been uncertain about that exact discrepancy for months. Slowly, she checked her authentication files. Amara was right. Again, she lowered the cup and met the child's gaze. You realize what this means, don't you? Amara hesitated. That I read too much. No, Hartley smiled. That you've been doing my job better than half my curators. For the first time, Amara's composure faltered. I never meant to cause trouble. Trouble? Hartley laughed softly. You may have just saved this gallery from an international scandal. Outside, the winter sun gleamed across the Hartley gardens, scattering diamond reflections across the glass windows. Inside, something far more valuable than art was unfolding, recognition. Tell me, Hartley continued, how many of my paintings do you believe are forgeries? Amara exhaled slowly. At least 3 recent ones. The Monet, the Goya, and the Degas. All have inconsistencies, paint chemistry, period inaccuracies, or brush patterns that don't align with the artist's habits. Hartley's heart sank. The mansion's collection was worth tens of millions. 1 forgery could cause a scandal. 3 could destroy reputations worldwide. But as Amara spoke, there was no arrogance, only quiet certainty. I never told anyone because she trailed off, eyes dimming. Who would listen to a maid's daughter? That single sentence landed like thunder. For years, this extraordinary mind had been walking their halls unseen, absorbing, learning, discovering, while everyone else had looked right through her. Not anymore, Dr. Hartley said softly. Not on my watch. By afternoon, they had filled pages with observations. Pigment variations, chemical irregularities, historical anomalies. Each note was sharp, meticulous, and damning. Finally, Hartley set down her pen. Amara, I want to see you work firsthand. The girl blinked. Work? Yes. Tomorrow morning, you'll join me in the conservation lab. We'll examine the Monet together. If you're right, you've just uncovered something that could shake the entire art world. Amara's pulse quickened. For the first time in her life, someone was giving her a seat at the table. She nodded, determination replacing fear. Then I'll prove it, ma'am. Dr. Hartley smiled faintly, sensing the weight of what was coming. Good, because tomorrow, truth will have its day under the lights. But neither of them knew just how many eyes and egos those lights would expose. The next morning, the private conservation lab inside Hartley Mansion buzzed with anticipation. Sterile white lights glared over easels and instruments. Bottles of solvents gleamed beside microscopes, and the air carried the metallic tang of precision. Dr. Evelyn Hartley adjusted her lab coat and turned to the small girl beside her. All right, Amara, show me what you see. 12-year-old Amara Cole slipped on protective gloves. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the gravity of the moment. The famous Monet painting hung before her, now sealed behind glass and surrounded by millions in equipment. Focus on every inconsistency, Hartley instructed. Amara switched on the examination light, flooding the canvas with harsh fluorescence. The once glorious brushstrokes now appeared under merciless scrutiny. The brushwork here, Amara murmured, her voice steady, is too hesitant. Monet's lines flow, they never hesitate. Hartley leaned closer, her curiosity sharpening. Go on. Amara pointed to a corner. And the pigment contains titanium white, which didn't exist in 1894. This paint came from the mid-20th century. The magnifier reflected in her wide eyes as she continued jotting notes in a small spiral pad. Her words came like a rhythm. Technical, sure, and undeniably brilliant. The canvas texture is machine-woven, she continued, tilting the magnifying glass. Authentic canvases of that period were hand-prepared. This texture is too uniform. Dr. Hartley's mind raced. The child wasn't merely talented. She was methodical, exact. Could restoration explain it? Hartley tested. Amara shook her head immediately. No. Restoration materials rest on top of original paint. These modern binders are embedded in the base layer. This piece was created with synthetic compounds and then artificially aged. The silence that followed was suffocating. For a full minute, only the quiet hum of the lab's air purifier filled the air. Finally, Dr. Hartley exhaled. You've done it, haven't you? You just proven our masterpiece is a fake. Amara looked down, guilt flickering behind her brilliance. I don't want to cause you trouble. Trouble? Hartley whispered, staring at the painting that had anchored her gallery's prestige for years. You may have saved us from one of the biggest frauds in modern art. For 2 hours, it documented every detail. Brushstroke measurements, pigment samples, microscopic anomalies. Amara's notes read like a scholar's thesis, precise and beautifully organized. As she worked, Dr. Hartley's admiration deepened. This child possessed not just knowledge, but intuition. She didn't need a degree to understand the soul of a painting. She could feel authenticity through observation. When Amara finally stepped back, exhaustion washing over her, Hartley smiled softly. If you're right, this painting's value isn't the only thing that changes tomorrow. The world will finally have to see you. But as they prepared the final report, Hartley's phone buzzed sharply. A message from the Metropolitan Museum's Authentication Division flashed on the screen. Bringing our experts for verification. Expect full inspection by morning. Hartley's stomach tightened. She knew what that meant: scrutiny, doubt, and politics. And in those rooms, Amara's age and background would matter more than her brilliance. That night, as the mansion's corridors fell silent, Amara sat alone by the window of their small servant quarters, the city lights reflecting in her eyes. Lydia entered quietly, a folded apron still in her hands. You've done something great, baby, she whispered. Amara turned, fear replacing pride. They'll never believe me, Mama. I'm just a kid. Lydia knelt beside her. Then let them underestimate you. Let them doubt. Just make sure when the truth comes out, it's too loud to ignore. Amara nodded slowly, gripping her notebook tighter. Tomorrow, the experts would arrive. Tomorrow, she'd face the same kind of people who once shooed her away from the painting she loved. But this time, she'd be ready. Because brilliance doesn't beg for permission, it demands recognition. By sunrise, the conservation lab at Hartley Mansion was unrecognizable. Cables, microscopes, and scanners sprawled across long tables. A team of specialists from the Metropolitan Museum arrived like a storm of authority, their polished shoes tapping against the marble floors. Their expressions carried the same weight as their titles: skeptical, impatient, certain they were about to expose a child's mistake. Dr. Evelyn Hartley met them at the door. "Thank you for coming," she said formally, though the tension in her voice betrayed her worry. Dr. Fiona Clark, the lead investigator, adjusted her glasses and scanned the room. "So," she said coolly, "where is this supposed expert who discovered your forgery problem?" Hartley gestured toward the far corner, where Amara Cole stood quietly in her modest clothes, clutching her worn notebook. Dr. Clark blinked in disbelief. "You can't be serious." Dr. Alvarez, the pain analysis expert, chuckled under his breath. "She's a child." Dr. Lin, the youngest of the group, glanced curiously at Amara, but said nothing. Hartley held her ground. "She's the one who made the discovery. Her findings deserve professional review." "This is highly irregular," Dr. Clark objected, already pulling on her gloves. "We can't base authentication results on." Her sentence stopped midair. Amara had stepped forward, speaking in fluent Italian as she pointed to the painting's brushstrokes. "The stroke hesitation near the lower quadrant indicates forgery," she said, her accent perfect. "Caravaggio's influence is clear, but the mimicry is too deliberate." Every expert in the room froze. She switched effortlessly to French, explaining the inconsistencies in pigment density, then to German, quoting European Museum authentication standards. Finally, she ended in English, calm and factual. "The data will match my notes exactly, if you test it properly." Dr. Clark's clipboard slipped from her hand. How did you learn to speak like that?" "I taught myself," Amara replied evenly. "Knowledge doesn't need permission to exist." The silence that followed was electric. Even Dr. Alvarez's smirk vanished. Still, Dr. Clark wasn't ready to surrender her pride. "Languages don't prove expertise. We'll run our own analysis." "Of course," Amara said softly. "The evidence will speak for itself." They began setting up their equipment: spectrometers, UV lights, X-ray scanners. Dr. Hartley watched, heart pounding, as Amara stayed beside the table, her small frame dwarfed by the towering machinery. Hours passed in tense silence, broken only by the hum of the machines. Then, the first X-ray image appeared on the large monitor. "Focus on the lower right quadrant," Amara said quietly, without looking up. Dr. Clark hesitated, but adjusted the scanner. The results appeared on screen: uneven paint density, layered inconsistencies, and clear signs of synthetic materials. Dr. Lin leaned closer. "She's right." Dr. Alvarez frowned, running his own pigment test. "The titanium oxide levels are modern." He looked at Amara, stunned. "How did you see this with the naked eye?" Amara simply replied, "Because I was looking when others weren't." One by one, the expert's doubt began to crumble. Every test confirmed her observations: machine-woven canvas, anachronistic varnish, and binders created decades after Monet's death. Finally, Dr. Clark removed her gloves slowly, her voice subdued. "In 20 years of analysis, I've never seen such an accurate preliminary report." Dr. Hartley's shoulders sagged with relief. Then it settled, but Amara wasn't finished. She pulled out her cracked phone, swiping to show comparison images she had gathered from online museum archives. "The same brush pressure patterns appear in auction listings from last month," she said. "Different paintings, same forger's hesitation marks." Dr. Alvarez leaned in, his jaw tightening. "She's right again. The patterns match." Dr. Clark turned toward the girl, her expression unreadable. "You're suggesting a forgery network?" "I'm saying this isn't just one fake," Amara replied. "It's a system." Hartley's pulse quickened. The implications were staggering: hundreds of millions in fraudulent art sales, international dealers, and decades of deception. Dr. Clark finally spoke, her voice quieter now. "If you're right, we're looking at one of the largest forgery rings in modern history." Hartley nodded. And we would never have found it if not for her. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Dr. Lynn smiled faintly at Amara. Welcome to the team, Miss Cole. As the others began packing their instruments, Hartley watched the girl who had changed everything, standing in the center of the lab, still holding her notebook like a weapon of truth. For the first time, Amara didn't feel invisible. But the art world was about to learn that truth has a price, and brilliance always comes with enemies. The next morning, the air inside the Hartley Foundation's boardroom felt heavier than marble. 12 board members, each a veteran of prestige, reputation, and old money, sat around the long mahogany table. Their expressions carried a single unspoken message. Explain yourself, Evelyn. Dr. Evelyn Hartley stood at the head, the weight of the previous day pressing against her calm exterior. Stacked neatly before her were files, reports, pigment analyses, and photographic evidence that proved the unimaginable. The mansion's crown jewel, the Monet, was a fraud. But what unsettled the board most wasn't the forgery. It was who had discovered it. You're telling us, said Mr. Randall Pierce, the chairman, his voice low and skeptical, that a 12-year-old child uncovered what our paid experts missed? She didn't uncover it, Hartley corrected firmly. She revealed it. Mrs. Delaney, head of the Education Committee, adjusted her pearl necklace and frowned. This is absurd. No formal training. No credentials. How do you expect us to take this seriously? Hartley met her gaze without flinching. Because the truth doesn't need credentials. It only needs evidence. She spread the photos across the table. X-ray scans, pigment test results, and the comparative studies Amara had compiled. Her work is irrefutable. She exposed not only a forgery, but a pattern, a network that stretches across multiple countries. The room went silent. The soft hum of the air conditioner filled the space where logic wrestled pride. Finally, Mr. Boyle, a tall man with a reputation for arrogance, leaned back in his chair. So what are you suggesting? We start hiring children as curators. Hartley's patience snapped. I'm suggesting we stop mistaking privilege for ability. Her voice cut through the still air like lightning. While we were checking resumes, a child with no degree was saving this institution from international scandal. For the first time, Mrs. Delaney looked uncertain. Even if we acknowledge her, what would people say? Our donors will think we've lost our standards. Standards? Hartley repeated bitterly. Our standards nearly cost us $12 million and our reputation. She looked around the table, locking eyes with each of them. Tell me, when did we decide that brilliance must come with a certificate? Silence again. No one dared move. She's still a maid's daughter, muttered one of the older board members. Hartley's expression hardened. And yet, that maid's daughter just outperformed every expert on our payroll. The tension broke when she placed Amara Cole's report at the center of the table. I'm putting my reputation on the line. If this board won't recognize this child's potential, I will take her case and her findings to the Metropolitan Museum myself. A stunned murmur swept through the room. Mr. Pierce, the chairman, cleared his throat. What exactly are you proposing, Dr. Hartley? Hartley took a steady breath. A full educational sponsorship. Private tutoring to complement her self-taught knowledge. Mentorship from our curatorial staff. And formal recognition as a consulting specialist. Mrs. Delaney frowned. She's 12, Evelyn. Mozart was composing symphonies at 12, Hartley shot back. Picasso painted masterpieces as a teenager. Genius doesn't wait for permission. The boardroom erupted into whispers. Some shook their heads. Others reluctantly nodded. When a final vote came, 7 were in favor, 5 opposed. It was done. That afternoon, as golden light poured through the tall windows of the gallery, Dr. Hartley handed Amara a small velvet box. Inside lay an antique brass key, delicate, old, and polished with care. This is the key to my private library, Hartley said softly. It represents access to knowledge, opportunity, and the recognition you've always deserved. Amara's hands trembled as she held it. Thank you, ma'am, she whispered. No, Hartley replied. Thank you for reminding me what real talent looks like. Later that evening, Amara ran through the quiet servant quarters, her heart pounding as she burst through the door. Her mother, Lydia Cole, looked up from folding laundry, startled. "Baby, what happened? Why are you crying?" Amara dropped to her knees, clutching the brass key. "Mama, they're going to pay for my education. Dr. Hartley gave me access to the library. She called me a specialist." Lydia froze, the towel slipping from her hands. "Oh, sweetheart, what are you saying?" Amara laughed through her tears. "You made this possible. Every sacrifice, every night you stayed late just so I could read. Mama, it worked." Lydia's eyes filled with tears as she touched the small key. "You've turned our struggle into legacy, Amara. You've done what generations couldn't." Through the window, the city lights shimmered like scattered dreams. But neither mother nor daughter knew that the revelation of one fake painting had just ignited a chain reaction that would expose something far greater than they could imagine. Because some truths don't end with discovery, they begin there. 3 weeks later, the tension inside Hartley Mansion was thick enough to cut with a palette knife. The forgery investigation had exploded beyond museum walls. News outlets, private collectors, and federal agencies were now circling the mansion like vultures around a secret. That morning, a convoy of black SUVs pulled up to the estate. Agent Dana Miles of the FBI stepped out, her expression grave. "Dr. Hartley," she said briskly, "we've traced the fake Monet to a larger criminal network. We'll need your cooperation and the girl's expertise." Behind her, several agents rolled in cases of evidence. Charts, invoices, and forged certificates littered the once serene gallery floor. Then came the man everyone had been waiting for. Laurent Duval, the French art dealer who had sold the painting, swept into the room with the arrogance of royalty. His tailored suit shimmered under the chandelier light, his confidence unshaken. "This investigation," he declared, "is a disgrace to the art world. I have nothing to hide." Dr. Hartley crossed her arms. "Then you won't mind answering a few questions." Duval's smirk widened. "Ask all you want. I've sold masterpieces for 30 years. My record is spotless." He turned suddenly, spotting the small figure standing beside Agent Miles, Amara Cole, dressed neatly in her new Navy consultant blazer. His smirk faltered. Who is this child doing in such a serious meeting? When Hartley introduced her as the authentication specialist who uncovered the forgery, Duval laughed loudly, the sound echoing off the gallery's walls. "A little girl? This is your expert witness." He turned toward his lawyers, shaking his head. "Mon Dieu, what a circus." Agent Miles ignored him. "Mr. Duval, we have reason to believe you're connected to a network producing high-grade forgeries. Care to comment?" "I have nothing to say," he replied, switching to French with a sneer. "These Americans understand nothing about true art." He leaned toward his assistant and spoke rapidly in French, confident no one around him could understand. His arrogance grew with each careless word. "These fools have no idea," Duval said. "The little black girl knows nothing of Europe's sophistication. The network in Milan and Rome remains invisible." Agent Miles raised an eyebrow, but said nothing, letting him dig deeper. Duval continued, his voice dripping contempt. "Our aging technique is flawless. Even the Louvre's experts couldn't detect our work. These stupid Americans will never find us." Amara's fists clenched under the table. Every syllable burned into her memory. The assistant looked increasingly panicked, whispering for him to stop, but Duval, inflated by pride, went on, revealing names, locations, and entire operations across Italy and France. Finally, Amara stepped forward. "Monsieur Duval," she said, her voice cutting through the air like glass. "Would you like me to translate your confession for everyone?" The room went silent. Duval froze. "Pardon." Her French flowed effortlessly, elegant, precise, aristocratic. "You just admitted to orchestrating a forgery network stretching from Paris to Milan. You called your clients stupid Americans and mocked their ignorance." Gasps rippled through the room. Agent Miles's pen hovered above her notepad. Duval's face turned ghostly white. You speak French?" Amara switched to flawless Italian. "An Italian." I also understand the language of guilt. His knees weakened as she repeated his words in English for the record. Every damning phrase he'd uttered now hung in the air, impossible to deny. Agent Miles gestured to her team. "We've heard enough. Arrest him." As FBI agents moved in, Duval slumped into his chair, muttering, "A child destroyed me." Amara met his eyes calmly. "No, your arrogance did that. I just understood what you said." Within hours, news broke across the world. The FBI had dismantled one of the largest art forgery networks in modern history. 40 paintings recovered, $200 million in fraudulent sales exposed. The following day, Hartley Mansion transformed into the stage of the century. Reporters filled the Grand Hall, cameras flashing like lightning as Dr. Hartley and Amara stepped up to the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dr. Hartley began, "allow me to introduce the young mind who uncovered the greatest art fraud of our generation, Amara Cole, age 12. The applause was thunderous. Amara stood at the microphone, her posture straight, her eyes bright but steady. Reporters fired questions from every direction. "How did you learn so much at your age?" asked one from the BBC. "I taught myself," she answered confidently. "The books in this mansion taught me what the world refused to." Another from CNN leaned forward. "What made you suspect the Monet was fake?" "I noticed the brushwork didn't match his emotional rhythm," she said simply. "Paintings tell the truth, if you listen long enough." As cameras flashed, one face slowly emerged from the crowd, a woman wrapped in guilt and embarrassment. Mrs. Helena Voss. Her voice trembled as she stepped up to the podium. "I owe this child a public apology. I was wrong to judge her by her background. Her brilliance shamed my ignorance." The crowd watched in awe as Amara nodded gently. "Thank you, Mrs. Voss. But instead of apologizing to me, maybe support children who don't have access to schools like this." The applause that followed wasn't polite. It was powerful, roaring through the hall like a declaration. And yet, the moment's true weight wasn't in the applause or the headlines. It was in the way the world suddenly saw a child once invisible, now luminous, unstoppable. But history wasn't done with her yet. 6 months later, the Hartley Mansion gallery glowed beneath soft morning light. The marble floors reflected the colors of priceless artwork. Pieces once overshadowed by scandal now reborn under a new legacy. At the center of it all stood Amara Cole, guiding a group of international visitors through an exhibition about art authentication. Her voice, calm yet magnetic, flowed effortlessly between languages. She was no longer the maid's daughter. She was the museum's youngest consulting specialist, the girl who had changed the art world. Dr. Evelyn Hartley watched from the balcony above, her eyes warm with pride. Every news outlet had told Amara's story, but seeing it unfold in real life was something else entirely. Where there was once silence, there was now applause. Where there was prejudice, there was possibility. In one corner, Lydia Cole stood beside a group of staff members, her face beaming. She clutched her worn handkerchief, the same one she'd used during long, cleaning shifts, now damp with joyful tears. Later that afternoon, Agent Dana Miles visited the gallery with news that left everyone speechless. "The International Forgery Network has been fully dismantled," she said. 40 counterfeit paintings recovered, and over $200 million restored to collectors and museums worldwide. Dr. Hartley looked toward Amara, who was carefully organizing restoration documents. "You were right," she said softly. "This wasn't just about one painting. It was about changing how the world measures genius." Amara smiled faintly. "And maybe how it measures worth." That evening, as the sun dipped below the city skyline, a small celebration filled the Hartley dining hall. Curators, security guards, kitchen staff, and even janitors gathered, not as ranks, but as equals. Harris, the night guard, recited a poem he'd written for Amara. She cleaned dust from frames others wouldn't touch, but it was her mind that polished the truth. The room erupted in applause. Even Dr. Hartley's eyes glistened. In the weeks that followed, the world continued to ripple with the aftershocks of Amara's courage. 12 museums worldwide revised their hiring policies, removing degree barriers and prioritizing demonstrated skill. The Hartley Foundation established a permanent scholarship fund, the AmeriCole Initiative, for underprivileged children who showed extraordinary curiosity and intellect. Soon, universities sent honorary invitations. Interpol requested her help with new investigations. Prestigious institutions offered her honorary fellowships. But Amara turned most of them down. "I want to stay here," she said during a live interview. "I want to prove that brilliance can grow anywhere, whether in a mansion or a janitor's closet." Her words sparked a movement. The hashtag talent has no uniform trended globally. Teachers, artists, and employers shared stories of discovering hidden prodigies in unexpected places. The quiet janitor who could compose symphonies. The retired nurse who built software. The immigrant cook who painted masterpieces on cardboard. Weeks later, Dr. Hartley invited Amara to speak at the United Nations Youth Forum. Standing before world leaders, Amara spoke with poise that transcended her years. "How many geniuses," she asked, "are we overlooking because they don't fit our expectations?" Talent doesn't wear a name tag. It just needs someone to notice. The chamber fell silent. Then applause thundered through the hall. Back at the mansion that night, Amara sat by her desk, surrounded by books in 7 languages. The small brass library key rested beside her museum badge, a symbol of where she started and how far she'd come. Her mother's photo smiled back at her from a silver frame. Her phone buzzed, a message from a young boy in Detroit. "Miss Cole, my teacher showed us your story. I used to be afraid to talk about my love for math. Now I'm starting a club for kids like me. Thank you." A moment later, another notification appeared from a grandmother in Kentucky whose quilting patterns had been featured in a local museum. Then another from a janitor in Paris studying chemistry during his breaks. The world was beginning to see its hidden brilliance. Amara smiled, whispering to herself as she picked up her pen again, because brilliance doesn't need permission. It just needs recognition. The screen faded to black, her soft voice lingering over the credits. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're tuning in from. If you enjoyed today's story, smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another powerful cinematic tale from Black Justice Tales. Speech Balloon, here's a quick question for you. Would you have spoken up like Amara did if the entire world doubted your voice? Reflect and share your thoughts in the comments, because the next invisible genius could be you.